Waiting for one more person to have quorum, and then we'll get started. All right, everyone, it appears we do have quorum. So before we kick off the meeting, I'd like to go ahead and ask our interpreter to introduce themselves and go over the process for the procedures before we kick off today's meeting. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Announcement from the interpreter. To use interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Welcome, everyone, to our January 9th, 2025 Mobility Working Group meeting. I'm Jennifer Williamson. I am the Deputy Director of Mobility Planning here at SANDAG, and you only really have me today, because what will happen here in the next meeting is that our board chair will elect a new representative to chair this meeting. So you'll have a new chair here, hopefully by our February meeting, if not then by our March meeting. So I'd like to take a few moments to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and the original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systematic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States. From 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, Dugueño, the Lusueño, the Cupueño, and the Cahuilla, and I apologize if I mispronounced any of those. This land has nourished, healed, and protected and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the Sandag community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to be recorded, please hold your microphone and turn the button on. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Ashley, who is serving as the clerk today, to confirm if we have quorum.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. Let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we begin on our agenda items, I'd like to review the meeting process for both the working group members as well as the members of the public who wish to speak. There's a little process here. For working group members, when you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and I will call on you by name. For members of the public, if you'd like to speak and you are in person, turn in a speaker slip, which are right over there, and we'll go ahead and allow you to offer comment. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business when we have quorum. Based on those factors, for today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 2 minutes for their comments. And let's go ahead and kick off our non-member public comments. Do we have any comments from the clerk or from the public?
We do. We have 3 comments for the non-agenda. We will first have Caesar, followed by Purita, and then 1 online comment with Alex Wong. Caesar, you step to the podium for your non-agenda public comment.
Request that my wife would speak first. Yeah.
Good morning. I am Frida Barber, senior of existing medical condition and a victim of ceramics. Count toxicity since 1997, located, constructed, and operated at 5230 Streamview Drive, San Diego, California 92105 in a residential zone designated Community of City District 9. My late husband was a veteran and a father figure of the couple, owner of the ceramics home business. He was 92 when he fell down in the other backyard, broke his hip, rehabilitated in the hospital, brought home. Few months later, passed away quietly on February 25, 2012. We were friends even after his demise. In my residency, I observed smoke and even fume or odor coming from their side. My late husband many times cautioned me not to go near the direction of the ceramics facility. Curious too that our windows were permanently fastened and closed. In those years, I had no idea what ceramics and its hazards. The COVID pandemic um, period 2020 led our curiosity into the subject and
time
learn
has
about
expired.
from the health bulletin.
Caesar, you're next.
Cesar Javier, a victim of this toxicity, exposed in 2000, beginning 2012. She was exposed since 1997. I was exposed 2012 by residency. Blessed. And we are here, many agencies, government, non-government agency, we voice this issue, a community sustainability issue. We are surviving, thanks God, because of the inspiration by our neighbors who are also impacted by this toxicity. We are here not to condemn you or anyone from the city. Where are the city representatives? Raise your hand, please. We reached you many times since 2021, June 13, when that particular day they fired the kiln with gas operation and there was an explosion, sudden explosion, sudden change, more intense this time, right after or even during the pandemic, June 13, 2012. Oh, sorry, 21. CDC declared in its bulletin, ceramic kiln, when it is used to reheat, heat repetitive mode, it would generate toxicity. That is science. Research further confirmed by Baylor University, Princeton University, Goshen College University, ordinary human person. It should not be there. It should be somewhere in a safer place. But is my city listening?
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Thank you for this opportunity for you to hear us.
Next is Alex Wong online. Alex?
Airport transit connection is a great project. Two of the project's concepts, the people mover and enhanced bus concepts.
Alex, you look like you are self-muted. Alex, we don't hear you. If you would like to try again, we can come back to you, or you can submit to the clerk's team via email. Clerk of the board at sandag.org.
Hear me? I'm afraid my audio is out of whack.
There we go. We can hear you, Alex.
Oh, okay. I don't know what was going on. Okay, the airport transit connection is a great project. Two of the project's concepts, the people mover and enhanced bus concepts, are wonderful, but the remaining concept, the airport trolley branch, is deeply flawed. The airport trolley would merge onto existing green and blue line tracks. It would take up green and blue line track space, thereby creating a bottleneck that would physically constrain the airport's green and blue lines possibly to only 10 minutes each. 10-minute frequencies in the mid-coast would be woefully inadequate. Already, mid-coast ridership has grown so fast that MTS plans to increase mid-coast frequencies to 7.5 minutes in 2025. And that's before San Diego approved the University City Plan update, which will add 72,000 new jobs and over 50,000 new residents near the mid-coast trolley. Unfortunately, despite costing $1.35 billion, the airport trolley would be less convenient than even the $54 million enhanced bus concept that would cost less than 5% of what the airport trolley would cost. The enhanced bus concept would speed up the 992 and airport to Old Town Flyer with dedicated bus lanes and transit signal priority. It could place ticket vending machines and fare validators at bus stops, allowing passengers to pay before boarding and board the bus at any door. Bus stop curbs could be raised to match the height of bus floors, allowing passengers to easily roll on and roll off with luggage. And the enhanced bus would come up to every 7.5 minutes, serve Old Town as well as downtown, and the stops right at Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. By contrast, the airport trolley stop would be a considerable walk from both Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. Best of all, the enhanced bus concept would not compete with existing trolley lines or track space, allowing mid-coast and green line frequencies to be maximized. Thank you.
Thank you. If working group members would like to offer any comments or questions, please raise your hand at this time. No, I see none. Thank you. Moving on to the, moving on to staff updates. We have two today. The first staff update comes from Richard Radcliffe, SANDAG Associate Financial Analyst on the Regional Transportation Improvement Program.
Thank you, Jennifer. Oh, sorry, a little loud. Good morning, Mobility and Working Group members. As she mentioned, I'm Richard Radcliffe, and I am a member of the financial programming team here at SANDAG, and I am responsible for the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or RTIP. And I'm just here to bring you a brief update on this. We received federal approval on the recently board-adopted 2025 RTIP on December 16th of 2024. And we currently have an amendment open, which is Amendment 1, the first amendment to the 2025 RTIP. It's posted for public comment on the SANDAG public notices page in case you would like to submit any comments. Today is the final day of the public comment period. This amendment was presented to the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, or ITOC, yesterday, and it will be going to the Transportation Committee on January 17th for adoption. After that, the board is expected to ratify the amendment at the January 24th meeting. And that's all I have. So if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me, or like I mentioned, provide comments through the public notices page. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Richard. Moving on to our second staff update from Jenny Russo, SANDAG's Grants Program Manager, on upcoming grant opportunities and informational webinars.
Good morning, working group members. So I have 4 different grant opportunities I wanted to let you know about. 3 of these are not ours and 1 is, but I thought you might appreciate knowing about them. The first one, which is probably one you should be super interested in, is on January 16th, the Active Transportation Resource Center. This is an organization that's funded through some state grants. They're holding a webinar on additional active transportation grant funding. So if you're looking for funding for bike and pedestrian projects, they're having this pretty comprehensive webinar. It's going to be held on the 16th from 9:30 to 11. You can register for it online if you go to the ATR website and you kind of click through the webinars page, you'll find it. They're having a panel of presenters from the Office of Traffic Safety, from Caltrans, the Strategic Growth Council, and FHWA to talk about different opportunities that are there that are either coming up soon or will be coming in the very near future. The next one is the Road to Zero Community Traffic Safety Grants. These are funded by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA. This is an annual grant program that funds projects or programs that help reduce roadway deaths or serious injuries. The grants range from between 50,000 to 200,000 and have a one-year term. So these are short grants. Applications for those are due on January 17th. I know that's short, but they do have an annual program. So if you want to start looking into it, maybe for next year. The next one, kind of right behind it, is the California Office of Traffic Safety Grants. This is a state program that passes through Federal Highway Safety Program funding. It's also an annual grant program, so it's reoccurring. This is a pretty broad program. It funds any sort of project that prevents serious injury and death from motor vehicle crashes. So it's pretty broad applicable. They have pedestrian and bicycle safety education grants. They have a lot of policing. So things like impaired driving, seat belts, checkpoints. They also do traffic records data and reporting hardware and software. So if you're looking to upgrade your data systems, they do have grants for that. And then it also funds EMS equipment like extrication and things like that. There's a lot of different award sizes depending on the subject area that you apply for. These are one-year grants also, and these are due on January 31st. And then the last one is the SANDAG Smart Growth Incentive Program. You should have received an email from Lizzie yesterday. So we are offering our Cycle 6 Call for Projects. It just opened on Monday. There's 45 million available. This is the largest offer that we've ever had in this program since its inception in 2009. The program funds comprehensive planning activities, public infrastructure projects, climate action plan projects, anything that helps facilitate compact mixed use, transit-oriented development, or increase housing and transportation choice. This one's available on our website, on the SANDAG website. If you click through grants, you can find it there. Next Wednesday, we're holding a pre-application webinar from 10:30 to 12. We'll be providing information about the program. We can help answer questions. We also have applicant assistance. So if you have a project in mind or something potential and you want to talk to us, we're offering one-on-one sessions with everyone where we can kind of go through in details and talk to you about eligibility, how it might score through criteria, things like that. If you have questions about BidNet, submittal, all those sorts of things, we're offering those throughout the application period. These grants have a 3-year or 3.5-year term, depending on the type that you're submitting, and the applications are due in about 90 days, so April 11th. So you have quite a bit of time on those. And as I mentioned, there's an email from Lizzie yesterday that has all the details for that one and specific links for it if you need more information. And with that, I will give it back to Jennifer.
Thanks, Jenny. Good information. So let's move on to the consent agenda. Today's consent agenda has item 2, which is the meeting minutes. Let's go ahead and see if we have any comments from the clerk on the.
We do. We have one public comment in person. Caesar, if you can make your way to the podium. Thank you.
This item is Cesar Javier. Good morning again. This item is very important because this is a measure of looking back what we have done. And from that historic drama, we can redirect, hopefully, morally, a better direction. Not stagnation, but something new, something, an experiment, not just a hypothesis this time. So may we suggest from the public, so we could participate fully within our means, within our cognitive abilities, this historic benchmark, which should be also clearly, briefly described, printed, or whatever. This is all about governance, making laws that would guide our implementers what to do, the right thing to do. And I hope our San Diego City representative of this finest city, the city of soldiers, active and inactive, as a respect. This is a lesson learned session, sirs, ma'am, from the city of San Diego, where most of our issue to address emanate from. My speaking here is not to condemn, but to redeem our sanity that we are indeed intelligent, honest public servant. I say again, to redeem, not to put you down or to offend your fast doing. It's been there. It's history. Thank you.
Any more comments, public comments?
No more public comments. Thank you.
If working group members would like to offer any comments at this time, please raise your hand. Yes, Nathan Schmidt.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Nathan Schmidt, City of Carlsbad. I'd just like to express some concern about approving the minutes before us. The reason being, they don't include our comments or any summary of the discussion from our previous meeting. Really, the concern is, when these discussions, they aren't captured, I feel like the value of our input is lost. I mean, I realize our discussions are captured by video, but the ability of minutes, they offer greater accessibility. Minutes are searchable by text. They're translatable through automation. They just really provide a better format for capturing our important feedback. And as a working group, we're typically making comments that are, we aren't deciding. We are an advisory working group, so we're forwarding our comments to the board. So I think in order to improve our effectiveness, I'd really like to see those discussions captured in the minutes. So that's why I can't support the minutes today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing that, do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Anybody?
City of Elkhorn, make a motion to approve.
Great. Do we have a second?
I can second.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. All in favor, raise your hands. Looks like we have one abstention or one unapproval, and everybody else has accepted. So moving on, let's go ahead and get on to our reports. We're going to have our first report is a discussion. Staff will present an update on the development of a long-term vision for climate action in the region and seek feedback on our greenhouse gas reduction measures. So we'll now hear from SANDAG Regional Planner Anna Bettis, Associate Regional Planner Natasha Dulick, and Samaya Elder on an update of the Regional Climate Action Plan. Take it away, ladies.
Good morning, members of the Mobility Working Group. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. We are going to be talking about the work that our team has been doing as part of EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. And on our agenda, I'll first kick us off with a brief overview of the grant that is supporting this work. And then I'll provide an update on the progress that we've made on one element of that grant, the Regional Climate Action Roadmap, which will be the primary focus of today's presentation. And then I'll be turning it to my colleagues, Samaya and Natasha, who will provide an overview of the process that we went through to develop the draft greenhouse gas reduction measures for the roadmap. And we'll also provide an overview of the initial measures themselves, which are in your agenda packets on page 9. So turning to the grant, back in September of 2023, SANDAG received a planning grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, which includes 3 deliverables. And as I mentioned, this is through their Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, which is supporting the development of regional and state climate action plans all across the country. So we're part of a larger group working on this. And you might recall that we brought this item to you back in July, where we talked about the first deliverable, the Priority Climate Action Plan, which was focused on measures that could reduce emissions primarily from transportation, buildings, and energy through 2030. And today we'll be focusing on the next deliverable that we're currently working on and which is due at the end of this year. the Regional Climate Action Roadmap, which is a comprehensive long-term vision for reducing emissions in the region through 2050, which will include additional sectors than what you saw in the PCAP. So it'll build on the PCAP, and it's also being developed in coordination with the 2025 regional plan. The grant lastly asks that we report on progress that we've made out in 2027. So with that, turning to that second deliverable that's currently underway, the Regional Climate Action Roadmap. As I mentioned, the roadmap is going to provide that comprehensive vision to support regional collaboration to combat climate change. And the scope is really focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And with that in mind, I wanted to highlight that the roadmap is not just about things that SANDAG can accomplish, but it's really, because it's a regional vision, it's looking at what other agencies in the region could also do. So keeping that in mind when you look at the measures, and we talk about them in a little bit. It builds on the PCAP, but also on existing climate action plans in the region. And the roadmap will include an updated regional greenhouse gas inventory. It'll include regional greenhouse gas projections going out through 2050, economy-wide greenhouse gas reduction targets that are aligned with state goals, as well as measures and actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across 7 sectors, which you can see listed on the right-hand side of the slide, and that we'll talk about more in today's presentation. Lastly, the roadmap will also look at the benefits to environmental justice communities associated with the measures, the reduction in air pollution that would occur if these measures were implemented, and the anticipated workforce needs. And with that, I'll hand it to my colleague Samaya, who's going to talk about the measure development process. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, and good morning, everyone. So now that you've heard a little bit about the larger grant program and the wider requirements of this roadmap deliverable, we're now going to delve in a little bit into our greenhouse gas reduction measures, specifically the process we went through to create them. So starting in July of 2024, we hosted a regional climate table workshop to hear initial ideas for measures and gather input on the community's climate priorities. We then took that information and spent the next several months compiling and assessing the feedback we heard, conducting additional research. And then in October, we had meetings with technical stakeholders to help us further develop our initial ideas for greenhouse gas reduction measures. And then we also have a couple of ongoing activities that are helping us get feedback on measures and climate priorities. So these have included interagency meetings with local government climate staff and other types of relevant stakeholders, partnerships with community-based organizations or CBOs to help us conduct community outreach throughout the region, and other engagement like presentations at working groups such as this one. So with that process in mind, we'll be moving into our actual draft measures that we have to share with you today. So Natasha and I will be sharing a little bit about the measures for each sector covered in the roadmap, which Anna showed a couple of slides ago. And we'll also be talking about some of the examples of corresponding objectives and actions. So not only what is the measure, but what would this look like in practice? However, before we get into them, there are a couple of things I wanted to note. One, the measures are very comprehensive and we can't cover everything in today's presentation. So we highly encourage you to not only share comments and feedback at the end of our presentation today, but also read through the measures on your own, which Anna mentioned start on page 9 of your agenda packet. You're welcome to email us with additional comments after today's meeting, and Natasha will be sharing more on that at the end of our presentation. I also want to acknowledge that, again, these are still drafts, and we're here today looking to incorporate additional feedback. And to reiterate what Anna mentioned earlier, the roadmap is a regional vision for collaborative climate action. So the types of measures that we've put together for each of the sectors represent many different types of agencies and stakeholders in the region. Not everything that you hear about today or see listed in the agenda packet would be implemented by SANDAG. So, moving into the measures, starting with transportation, this includes continuing and growing many of the key projects and programs already underway in the region. So the measures include increasing public transit use, expanding active transportation, including walking and biking, expanding flexible fleets services, including neighborhood electric vehicles and micromobility, continuing and expanding transportation demand management programs such as Van Pool to help reduce VMT or vehicle miles traveled, increasing the adoption of zero-emission vehicles, and this includes passenger vehicles as well as trucks, buses, other medium and heavy-duty vehicles. And finally, reducing fuel use from idling vehicles, for example, by installing roundabouts and implementing curb management strategies. Moving to the next slide, which covers 2 sectors, and the next couple of slides have multiple sectors on them as well. So if you ever get confused, please note that the measures are color-coded and correlate with the icons in the top right hand of the screen. So starting with electricity in the blue, we have one measure, which is to decarbonize the regional electric grid. This includes things like increasing participation in fully renewable electricity options ahead of what's already being mandated by the state. And it also includes increasing the generation of distributed renewable energy throughout the region. For buildings, the two in the middle and the right in gray, we have increasing the electrification of buildings. So for example, converting the power source of a building from natural gas to electric, as well as increasing the energy efficiency of buildings for those that are already electrified. And then for both of these building measures, we're looking at municipal, residential, and non-residential or commercial buildings. So with those 3 sectors down, I'm going to now pass it to Natasha to cover the remaining measures and discuss next steps.
Thanks, Samaya. So again, my name is Natasha, and I'll be covering the last 4 sectors that we have here for our roadmap. So starting with natural and working lands and waste and materials management. Natural and working lands we'll cover first. These are the top 3 in green. So these measures are really looking to conserve and preserve our existing ecosystems in our region and focus on measures that would capture carbon and act as sinks. So the first measure we have is to conserve marine and wetland ecosystems. So actions would look to preserve and restore our wetlands, including lagoons, estuaries, and salt marshes, along with our kelp forests and eelgrass beds. Next measure we have is to conserve forest, shrublands, and chaparral ecosystems. So these actions would seek to preserve and reserve our forest ecosystems and implement existing multiple species and habitat conservation programs that are in our region. And then our last measure would be to increase urban canopy cover. And this would seek to develop an urban forestry management plan with a regional inventory that could assess where canopy cover is most needed and look to prioritize canopy cover in environmental justice communities, so adding in trees where necessary in those communities. Next, I'll move into waste and materials management. So these are the bottom 3 in the pink purple tone. And the first one that we have is to divert waste from landfills. So actions here would be focused on diverting organic waste, waste from construction and demolition, as well as increasing or expanding our food recovery programs in the region. The next measure is to reduce landfill emissions through increased methane capture. And this could include expanding programs for methane capture at existing landfills in our region and conducting field testing with reports of methane capture rates. And then our last measure for this sector is to reduce emissions from water and wastewater treatment facilities. And this would look like expanding and implementing methane capture at these facilities and just increasing the overall energy efficiency of the existing processes to treat and distribute water at the facilities. Okay, so these are our last 2 sectors. We have agriculture and industry. I'll cover agriculture first, and these are the 4 orange ones on the left side, looking to just reduce overall agriculture emissions and conserve where possible. So the first measure we have is to reduce agricultural emissions, operations emissions, which can be supported by transitioning operations to cleaner fuel types and energy sources and increasing overall energy efficiency of machinery and farm equipment. Next, we have expand urban farming in the region. And this would include expanding or identifying sites for things like community gardens and public spaces, and also promoting purchasing from local ag businesses, farms, and gardens. Next, we have conserve agricultural lands. So this would be actions like supporting the voluntary dedication of agricultural conservation easements and other actions that preserve our ag lands, possibly through things like zoning or looking at the Williamson Act. And then last but not least for ag, we have manage soil health to sequester carbon. So this would focus on improving soil management practices in our ag lands and developing programs to encourage the use of regenerative practices. So this could include carbon farming. Now switching to the last sector we have, which is our industry sector. We have two measures here on the right side in this reddish tone. I will note we don't have a huge industrial sector here in San Diego, but there are still ways to reduce our emissions. The first measure that we have is to reduce energy intensity of our industrial facilities. So this can mean increasing industrial efficiency overall and increasing distributed energy resources, so renewable or alternative fuel uses at these facilities in our region. And then our last measure is to reduce fugitive and short-lived climate pollutants and emissions. Just for some information, fugitive emissions are those that are unintentionally released, like leaks or discharge, so usually gases or vapors from equipment or facilities. So actions here would be to find ways to reduce these fugitive emissions along with high global warming potential refrigerant use, which is a common short-lived pollutant. Okay, so that gets us through all of our 7 sectors in our draft roadmap. So I'll look at some next steps now on how we're going to be going through these measures and conducting outreach. So we will be seeking feedback on these draft reduction measures and our supporting actions throughout the rest of this month, and continuing to work with our consultant, who is USD EPIC, to quantify the emission reductions that will come from these measures. As far as feedback and input goes, we will be collecting through a few different avenues. We'll be presenting at additional working groups the rest of this month. We'll be hosting a 4th climate table in February and releasing a public survey in the coming months as well. And then in addition to the measures, we are also working with EPIC to complete an updated regional greenhouse gas inventory that we plan to have ready by this spring. And looking further ahead, we will be aiming to publish our draft roadmap and host another climate table to go over that this summer, and then look to come back to you with milestone updates along the way. So our big call to action today, like I said, we're looking for feedback on these draft measures and their supporting actions. So we would love to hear from you today if you have any questions or comments. But like Samaya mentioned, if you'd like to take time and look at the measures, we have them attached in your staff reports. So feel free to send any questions or comments our way to this email listed here by the end of the month, please. So by January 30th. And this is our information again. Thank you so much for your time. So I'll pass it back to you to ask any questions.
First, Ashley, do we have any comments from the public?
Yes, we have one public comment, Cesar Javier.
Cesar Javier. Would you stand up, please? The presenters. This is the breed of young Americans who will take over our places. Congratulations. You did an intellectual presentation, and I think it's honest. Thank you. Thank you. Again, I must emphasize that the product of your effort has been blessed with adequate money. True. Why? Because it is the right thing to do, to support you. Decent home, suitable, healthy habitat. And thank you, SANDAG, because you are inspiring us to redeem the handicap of my District 9, City of San Diego. We have the money, but the point is, it is invested 65%. You cannot touch it only when it reaches the maturity. What is happening at the crisis at the border, District 8 of City of San Diego? We redeem these boys coming from a public and a poor West Bank of District 9, Choyas Parkway. You mentioned about the heritage, great heritage of our native population. This is a redemption. Sir's mom from the City of San Diego. you will learn and you will be guided the way we craft laws, laws that will be implemented honestly and wisely. We redeem you with our presence here, and thank you, SANDAG.
Any other public comments?
There are no additional public comments.
If any of the working group members would like to offer comments at this time, please raise your hand. Yes, Roy?
Just quickly, I was just looking at the transportation sector improvements. Do they go further than what the RTP does? Because I think they look pretty consistent with the strategies that might be in the RTP. So I'm wondering if there's anything new or innovative that you discovered outside of that. I saw roundabout as mentioned, but anything else? And then also I saw a lot of more electrification, but then more, does the grid support that? And if not, how will that new energy be produced, and would that produce new GHG? Specifically for, buildings and charging for vehicles.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. Really good questions. So starting with transportation, you'll see in the staff report attachment that there are a number of supporting actions under each of the measures, and those are more of a blend of advancing projects that might already be kind of scoped through the RTIP, but also things that can be as specific as explore X, Y, and Z, or conduct outreach to understand the needs for this kind of emerging or innovative technology. So there's kind of a blend there that all lead up to the measure itself. And then for the electrification question, really good point. I think that's kind of just a duality that we're grappling with all the time in our projects. For the roadmap specifically, we are trying to balance kind of the call for electrification, especially in the building sector, with our electricity sector measures. So, decarbonization, increasing renewable energy supply throughout the region. So there's definitely a balance that needs to be achieved. But as far as our long-term vision, I think it's that we'll get to that point. Do you have anything to add?
I'll also note, we do have some supporting actions under the electricity, specifically decarbonizing the regional electric grid, where we try to identify, or we note to identify grid constraints and looking into things like that. So, but we do welcome your input and feedback.
Yeah, I know that's just one of the biggest challenges is the grid is limited, and the more you add to it, you have to produce more. And so, thank you.
The only thing I might add, and thank you for your feedback and comments, in addition to the measures themselves, we'll have an opportunity to have some narrative leading into that. So we can explore, how we might be able to highlight some of these challenges within the document. So appreciate the comments.
Anyone else? Nathan?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. We will be looking at this closer with our own climate action team at the City of Carlsbad and getting back to you with more detailed comments. Overall, I think it looks good. Lots of appropriate measures, fully supportive of TDM. Like to see roundabouts and improving efficiency with air quality there. That makes a lot of sense. In regards to transit, would just like to see some type of mention of looking at ways to optimize our current system. So looking at currently underperforming routes and seeing, ways that we could modify those to improve efficiency there. But I also fully understand, looking at ways to improve frequencies, expand transit as appropriate. So being very kind of sensitive with the balance of just blindly, adding routes versus being strategic about where those routes are added, and potentially looking at reducing areas where they're currently underperforming and replacing those with things like flexible fleets, which is already in there. So appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback.
Anyone else? No, seeing no one. Thank you, ladies. And we'll move on to our next item, which is the Harbor Drive 2.0 and Vesta Street Bridgeport Access Improvement. Staff from SANDAG and Caltrans will present. I'm sorry, I think we might only just have SANDAG today. We'll present on an update on the Harbor Drive 2.0 Vesta Street Bridge project, including funding, status, and components. So Andrea Hoff is a senior regional planner at SANDAG, and it doesn't appear we have Maggie here today to present on the project.
Yes, hello, members of the Mobility Working Group. I do apologize. Maggie would have liked to be here. We were just a little hard pressed on coordination after the holiday. In the future, typically we do have both Caltrans and SANDAG presenting these projects as they are joint projects. With that, let's get into the presentation. The Harbor Drive 2.0 and Vesta Street Bridge project sounds like two projects. It's really a network of projects. And where these are planned is in the working waterfront, which is, many of you may be familiar, really a regional economic engine for San Diego. Along the working waterfront, we have historically disadvantaged communities such as Barrio Logan in the city of San Diego. We also have National City, so multiple jurisdictions. We have the Port of San Diego with its 2 marine terminals, including 10th Avenue Marine Terminal and National City Marine Terminal. Light and heavy rail, shipbuilding, the Port Tenants Association and the various tenants located in the community. Naval Base San Diego spans both sides of Harbor Drive. This area is a strategic military asset. And really, as I mentioned, just a really important, vital goods movement corridor in our region. Here's another look at the area where the Harbor Drive and Vesta Street Bridge projects are located. You'll see in yellow Barrio Logan. I'm having a little trouble seeing the orange label. Forgive me. But the 2 dark blue are the marine terminals, and you'll see Naval Base San Diego in green and turquoise. Those are known as the wet and dry sides of Naval Base San Diego. And what this project intends to do is use this Harbor Drive corridor to speed up the movement of goods between the marine terminals. And so some of the project features envisioned include potentially a sort of a managed lane for trucks, in addition to freight signal prioritization. This is where sort of like transit prioritization in signaling, where the street lights would enable trucks to advance beyond other traffic. Some of the civil infrastructure that would be required are called queue jumps, which paints the street in order to allow those trucks to jump the queue. New traffic signals, wayfinding, control gantries. These are some of the project features that we are currently analyzing for implementation. In addition, I mentioned this is a network of projects that really works together. The Vesta Street Bridge component would span Harbor Drive, lifting a lot of the Naval Base San Diego traffic off of Harbor Drive between the wet and dry sides of the base. So currently, personnel have to leave the wet side, or that turquoise side, exit their gate onto Harbor Drive, and then re-enter another gate on the dry side of Naval Base San Diego. It creates a lot of congestion. There's a lot of personnel down there, a lot of activity. So the idea with Vesta Street Bridge would be to provide an internal connection for the base so that the Navy personnel and other contractors and users of the base would not have to exit onto Harbor Drive. They could use this internal circulation. In addition, some of the other features planned as part of this network are improvements to the freeway ramps, accessing the freeway. So not only does the project intend to improve, make more efficient goods movement between the marine terminals, but also accessing the nearby freeways. And then rehabilitating some pavement at key locations. The heavy use of the streets by trucks really tears up the roads, and there are some places that need to be rehabilitated. This is a very simplified view of the project features. Overall, the goals of the project are to improve community safety and prioritize safe access to transit and active transportation, in addition to improving goods movement. You'll see on the map on the left the blue corridor, which is the City of San Diego's designated truck route. The streets labeled in red are restricted for for large vehicles, for trucks. And the community has long faced challenges with the trucks traversing these local streets, which creates conflicts with other users, pedestrians, sensitive users. There's schools there, even with regular cars. So the idea would be to incentivize trucks to stay on the designated truck route rather than shortcutting through the community. In addition, we want to improve multimodal connectivity for Naval Base San Diego with the Vesta Street Bridge. That bridge will have bike and sidewalk as well as auto lanes. I mentioned the rehabilitation of degraded pavement, and this community, these portside communities are also designated by the state as being particularly impacted by air pollution. They have the portside community here. We have two specially designated communities in the region, the portside and then one down at the international border with Mexico. And these communities have been assisted by the Air Pollution Control District to create what's called CERPs, or Community Emissions Reduction Programs. And this project has been in their plan as a goal. So we intend to, as we move into design, and I'm going to get into kind of the status of where we are with this, we want to ensure that the project that gets built, whatever form it may take, continues to be really a win for this community. Here are some of the elements of the Harbor Drive 2.0 sort of component. I mentioned the dedicated truck lanes. Currently, the project report, which was completed by Caltrans along with the environmental document in record time, I might add, in order to secure the funding, which we have been successful in securing from the state for this project. It was a requirement to get the environmental document done by the end of 2023, and they were successful in doing that. Currently, the truck lane is kind of segmented, and so we want to take kind of a deeper dive during design to figure out if we're going to gain those time savings that we initially feel could be achieved through this project. So you'll see dedicated and off-peak truck lanes in the current design. I mentioned the freight signal priority and freight queue jumps. In addition, the project envisions installing zero-emission vehicle charging facilities, location to be determined, but the idea would be to have this clean, connected corridor for trucks. And then there's also concepts including geofencing potentially, which could help, if planned appropriately with all the stakeholder involvement, manage the truck traffic to stay on the designated truck route. There's also, the port is very involved in this project, and we intend to discuss the possibility of a reservation system there to help manage truck traffic and a potential gate operating system. They have a lot of incredible work ongoing, so there's going to be a lot of coordination and overlap, and we'll have to figure out which components become part of this versus part of other projects in the region or in that particular area. Here's a look at Vesta Street Bridge from overhead. You can see, as I mentioned, it spans Harbor Drive. It will raise the traffic above the rail lines, and it's connecting the wet and the dry sides of Naval Base San Diego. The center lane is intended to be a managed lane, which the direction can be switched according to different times of day, the demand. And I'll note here, Caltrans and SANDAG, I also work on Otay Mesa East, and on both of these projects, we are very much partnered. So this is a joint project, but just to be clear, Caltrans is actually leading the design of the Vesta Street Bridge, while SANDAG is leading the right-of-way activities. For the Harbor 2.0, the traffic signals and the ITS along Harbor Drive, we're leading the design at SANDAG, and but not without Caltrans' assistance in some of the civil infrastructure. So it can be a little confusing, but I just want to acknowledge that there are two projects, and the design for SANDAG is on Harbor, and the design for Vesta is at Caltrans currently, with both kind of participating in each. Here is a visual simulation of the potential Vesta Street Bridge. Caltrans has narrowed it down most likely to a precast rather than a cast in place type of bridge for a variety of reasons. And you can see a look at the design schedule. They're well underway. In fact, we're trying to catch up with their excellent design work on the bridge. Here is a look at the widening of the State Route 15 off-ramp at Maine. One of the goals is to, as I mentioned, encourage the trucks on the designated truck route, but also with Vesta Street Bridge, there will be a change in demand for the different Navy gates. And so what this off-ramp will assist in doing is divert a lot of the traffic that currently uses like the 32nd Street Naval, 32nd Street and Harbor gate. They will now be able to utilize another gate that's a little bit further away, closer to the freeway, and then get to the wet side using the bridge. So our first order of business, which we're really getting into in full swing in the new year, is a very comprehensive traffic study and micro simulation to determine what those diversions would be, what the demand is, and how we can design the harbor corridor so that we improve travel times for all users. Here's another off-ramp improvement located at 28th and National Ave. And here shown in red, you'll see some of those key locations where the project intends to rehabilitate pavement. Here's a look ahead at our schedule. I mentioned in winter 2023, the project approval and environmental document were completed, both CEQA and NEPA. That enabled us to allocate $18.5 million in trade corridor enhancement funds for the project in spring. That allocation was matched by the Port of San Diego in the amount of $2.2 million. And then recently we were successful in obtaining $11 million from the federal government in a Reconnecting Communities grant, which completes the package of funding needed for the design and right-of-way phases of both components. Currently, construction is unfunded. The project, I would anticipate, would be attractive to the federal government for potential future funding. But at this point, construction funding has not been identified. After we did receive the funding listed there in the summer, we initiated several design procurements, one in particular, which we now have a team on board to do the traffic study, the micro simulation, and we're in the process of procuring expertise to do a concept of operations for the ITS signalization portion, right-of-way expertise, and outside legal counsel. The right-of-way not impacts, but the utilities and the various jurisdictions are quite complicated and will require a lot of coordination and work in order to get the project smoothly built. So we're in the turquoise phase currently. It's the design phase. We will be holding project development team meetings. We're really anticipating an iterative design process where the traffic study, the ITS planners, the designers, and the micro simulation, we really all need to work together in order to figure out what solution is going to work well along harbor. And then once we have a solid design for the harbor corridor and the Vesta Street Bridge, which is a bit more straightforward in terms of design, we will be selecting a delivery method and identifying funding for construction in order to begin construction. At this point, it has not been determined who would take the lead on constructing which piece, but per usual, we will be in close coordination with our partners. Some challenges and opportunities that I like to call attention to include the items listed here. The image you're seeing is from the environmental document. It's one potential lane configuration. As you'll see, the median has been slightly adjusted, and you'll see different traffic in different lanes. The traffic study that was conducted for the environmental document did show travel time savings over the entire corridor, but there were some problem areas at specific intersections. So we want to continue to evaluate travel time savings for different types of users. We want to look at the signal timing. There's challenges if you have a dedicated truck lane in the center. There's challenges when people need to turn left, and so how to make that function and work well. We still need to determine where the gantries would be placed, and that changes cost. It can change right-of-way impacts. There's a lot of, I mentioned coordination, but it's worth mentioning again. There's other ongoing projects in the area, including the Bayshore Bikeway, Barrio Logan segment. There's there's work that the port is doing. Caltrans has additional projects in the area. So really getting a grasp of how the projects interact with each other will be an important component of this 2-year design phase, 2 to 3 years. There's opportunity for urban greening and beautification. Some alternatives would remove landscaping, and that's not always a popular thing to do, especially in a community that faces air pollution impacts. So there might be opportunities to increase greening. We want to work with Naval Base San Diego to help. They're already looking at coordinating their access at different gates and maybe creating a new gate or closing certain ones. So we want to continue to coordinate with them on ensuring the most efficient circulation. And we'll be seeking input, of course. This is a very preliminary kind of introduction to the project, but I anticipate that Caltrans, I don't want to speak for Caltrans, but I anticipate we would return as we have more refined design ideas to continue to seek input. We're looking for input not only from the stakeholders I mentioned, but the community as well, to really make sure the project is a win for all parties. And that concludes my presentation today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Andrea. Do we have any comments from the public?
Yes, we have one public comment. Cesar Javier.
Thank you. Thank you, Ma'am Nunez. Thank you. I believe that you're honest and wise under God, and we support this journey. This is a case between economic gain and survivability of humans and the thing. Specifically on circulation and mobility, this is all about decongestion project or dream. I must say it's a dream because this is the dream of young people. Okay. This is a calendar of the Air Pollution Control District, a propaganda machine product, if I might say it. Anyone from Air Pollution Environment Agency? Oh, City of San Diego, planning. Part of the blue, we call it, land use, building, and environment group. They are the ones crafting the law, the ordinances to be implemented by the executive branch led by the mayor. They are failing. I hope that failing would not be the same failing as the great plan of SANDAG and the implementation. There are projects which are honest and wise being done despite lack of funding as presented. The city has money. 65% is tied to investment, money making. This is an emergency. Why can't we not use that? We change the policy for the sake of honest and wise pursuit of decent home, clean water, clean food, clean air, clean and safe.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Any other comments from the public?
additional comments.
Okay. Working group members have a comment right now. Please raise your hand. Yes, Tate?
Thank you, Tate Galloway, City of San Diego, City Planning Department. Just want to acknowledge your working or willingness to work with the community. I want to thank you for that. And as well as the potential improvements that not only will help facilitate goods movement, but also improve multimodal for bicycle and pedestrians in terms of the improvements you're going to do. Also, just want to acknowledge the importance of, as you mentioned, keeping truck traffic from cutting through the community. That is a important issue in terms of limiting that amount of cut through and keeping it on harbor to the degree as possible and primary routes to the freeway. And also just finally, just want to confirm that the improvements that have been done for the Bayshore Bikeway wouldn't be affected by this, or to the extent that there would still be a dedicated Class 1 facility.
This project would not change Bayshore Bikeway improvements.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments? If not, we'll move on to our next item, which is adjournment. I want to give you a quick reminder, though, that our next meeting is February 13th, and it's going to be part of a joint working group meeting that'll be held at the public library. So you'll be getting more notice on that here in the next couple weeks. But with that, I thank everyone.